Welcome back to another episode of the Casey Campbell Podcast. Casey Campbell with you, of course. Pleased to be joined by Ben Keating, of course, who will be competing in the Rolex 24 for PR1, Mathiasen Motorsports. How's it going?
Very good. How are you, Casey?
Doing well, doing well. Well, first off, excuse me. Thank you so much for joining us and going into the Rolex 24 once again with the PR1 team. What are we going to expect with that in 2023 in Rolex?
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting year for me, I guess I would say. There are a lot of interesting things about it. I can take the conversation in lots of different directions, but just to kind of ramble about it for a while, this will be my fourth Rolex 24 with PR1 in an LMP2. I'm excited about that. I really love the team and I love everything about the guys there. And I really think that we've done a lot of work in the off season to have the best car we can possibly have there. The LMP2s are quite a bit different in IMSA this year than they've been in the past because they have taken away a lot of power. They've taken away a lot of aero. They're trying to slow the cars down, to be able to give the GTP cars a chance at winning this deal. And so, it's a little bit, those different changes in the car have changed the setup for the car. And so we're trying to do a lot of work to be able to, have the best car, come to the track with the best prepared car that we can have. And we hope that our work in the off season will give us a leg up whenever we get to the Roar next week. But, I'll even say, by the time we get to the race, and that's all kind of yet to be seen. But that is exciting. In most of the last 10 years, I have been a driver in two different cars in the Rolex 24. This year, I am not. This year, I'm going to be in one car, and there are positives and negatives with that. I had the honor of being part of the JDC Miller, number 5 Cadillac DPI car last year. We were the top finishing Cadillac. We were on the podium. It's fun to be on the overall podium as a bronze driver, the only AM driver in the DPI field. That's a lot of fun. And just the way it's worked out this year, I'm only in the one car, and I'm also excited about that. Daytona is my favorite race of the year. I feel like my experience there would say that every car is a long shot. You can't go into that race thinking you're a favorite because anything can happen, stuff that can happen that's completely out of your control. And so I feel like every car is a long shot. And so the reason I've typically been in two different cars is because I feel like I'm doubling my chances to win the race. And that's the only race that I can realistically be in two different cars. I love doing it. It just hadn't worked out for this year. I thought I was going to do that, and it just hadn't worked out. But the advantage of only being in one car is that I can be a good teammate with my other drivers. Every time I'm in two cars, I feel like a terrible teammate. Switching between teams and switching between cars during practice sessions, never making it to the debrief, never making it to the driver meetings. I feel like I'm all over the place and I'm not a very good teammate. So I'm excited to concentrate on that one car, that one team, begin to build relationships with my new teammates, which is the next thing I'll talk about. But also, it's pretty hard to do 9.5 hours of driving in the first 18 hours of the race. And so, only being required to do 4.5 hours in the LMP2 car, that'll be like a vacation for me. I've got somewhere around 90 guests coming to the race. And so, the advantage of that for me is that this will afford me the ability to spend more time with my friends and family and sponsors and everything else while I'm there. And so it's not all bad that I'm only in one car. And it's my hope and expectation that that one car will be a really, really good effort. This year, and feel free to interrupt me. I'm just going to keep rambling as long as you'll let me.
Yeah, no problem.
So, this year, without a doubt, is the most competitive LMP2 field that we've ever seen for the Rolex 24. There are 11 cars in the GTP class, in the top class. There are 11 cars in the LMP3 class. There are 11 cars in GTD, or actually they may have just bumped it to 12, but there are 12 cars in LMP2. And so if I really believe that every car is a long shot, then I would have to say that just by the fact of having 12 cars in the LMP2 class makes it one of the most difficult classes to win. The other piece of that puzzle is that every car in the class is an Orica chassis with a Gibson engine. So it's effectively a spec class. That makes it much more difficult to win because every car is the same. And then lastly, if you look at the driver lineups of all those 12 cars and you look at the history of the LMP2 class, I think without a doubt, the field of drivers in the LMP2 class is way more competitive this year than we've ever seen it. And so I'm excited about that just because I love a challenge. But even in the years where I would look at it and say, I think that we should win, we haven't. And so, it's going to feel really, really good if we're able to do well this year, knowing that the field, the class, is much more competitive than it has been in a really long time, maybe ever, in IMSA. And for me personally, I've got a little bit more drama, I guess I would say, with my teammates in that. I won the championship in 2021 with PR1, driving with Mikkel Jensen and Scott Huffaker. And then we were teammates again in 2022. We only did the 4 long races, and we won the North American Endurance Cup in 2022. And right before we got to Petite, my co-drivers that I've been with for the last couple of years let me know that they're going to be driving with Stephen Thomas in 2023. So they have switched over to running with one of my competitors, and I have been I've had great relationships with Mikkel and with Scott. And I have had great relationships with Stephen Thomas. I'm not exactly happy with how this whole deal went down, and it just given me a little bit more fire in the belly, so to speak. I have 2 competitions I'm running for in this race. First and foremost, we want to win the Rolex 24. But secondly, we want to do whatever we can do to beat the 11 car, just because there's a little bit more personal, goal of beating the guys that I've been running with for the last couple of years, because they've chosen to go with the competition.
So let's who are your new teammates this year?
So I'm really excited. We have chosen to go with Paul-Luc Chatin. Paul-Luc has been an Orica LMP2 driver for many years, and he really knows the car well. Is really, really strong and good in terms of setup. And by everything I have seen, all the research I have done, I can't believe that he hasn't been snatched up by a professional factory team in LMDH or hypercar. I believe he's that level of driver. I'm super excited to have him on the team, not only for all the setup work and preparing the best car we can, but also for his skill behind the wheel. When it comes to either keeping a lead that I give him or hunting down the guy in front and passing them for the win, I believe he's the right guy to do it. And if you look back at the performance reports at the Rolex 24 over the last 3 years, he has been at the top. And so I know he knows how to get around that particular track extremely well. And so I feel really good about my teammates with Paul-Luc. The fourth driver, Daytona is the only race where we have 4 drivers. The fourth driver will be Nico Lapierre, who's the same fourth driver that we've had in the PR1 car for the last 2 years. So he will be with me for a 3rd year in a row. And again, if you look back at the history of drivers at that track, Nico has been at the top as well. So I'm really excited about the pro drivers that I have. Those 2 guys know the cars extremely well. They're very technically minded, and I really feel good about our ability to compete in a spec class, because you only have so many different knobs and tools you can work with, and I really feel good about our ability to set up a car that's going to be quick and easy to drive for 24 hours, which is what matters there. Our silver driver is a kid named Alex Quinn out of the UK, out of England. And this will be his first experience in an LMP2 car. But a really nice guy. He's had some success in some smaller formula cars. And I think he's going to be great behind the wheel.
Yeah. So kind of going into that, you look at the field right now. What does it take? How hard is this race to, like, it seems like from talking with a lot of guys that, there's outside of the car maybe the biggest challenge than inside of the car.
I think it is inside the car. I think it's all inside the car. And I think that it is, it's not about being the fastest guy on track. And the challenge to me for all the drivers, including myself, is that we are all racing drivers. We all are competitive. We all want to be at the top of the charts. We all want to be the fastest driver in the car. And the fact is that that's all nice on the report after the race, but it does not matter. And The only thing that matters is having a car that's in really good condition, with all the dive planes on it, and the floor's in good shape, and the splitter's in good shape, and the diffuser's in good shape without having any contact, and all of that for the first 20 hours of the race. To me, the biggest challenge, no matter what car you're in, is all four drivers are going to get in the car during the first 20 hours of the race, and they're going to go out there and race as fast as they can go, because that's what racing drivers do. And anytime you're out there going as fast as you can go in a field of 61 cars, who are all trying to go as fast as they can go in 5 different classes, and the ability to do it for the first 20 hours without making a mistake, without having any contact, without making a pass that might be too aggressive, while holding yourself back, the ability to hold yourself back, be willing to be slow, be willing to wait for a pass, be willing to be conservative, because that's what's the best thing for the team, and that's the best thing for the car to make it to the end of the race. That is the key of doing well at Daytona, and that all happens in the car, and it happens individually with each driver one at a time, and it's really, really hard, because it's not in our nature to be conservative. It's not in our nature to make the choice to be slower. And normally, if there's a gap, then you shoot it. If there's a hole, then you go for the pass. And that's not always the wisest move to make, the wisest thing to do in a 24-hour race. And it's really, really hard, to do. And whatever, it might be, I know for a fact it's faster going through the bus stop if you hammer all the curbs. And I also know for a fact that if you hammer all the curbs for 20 hours, then your floor is going to be a disaster at the end of the race, and you're not going to be fast. And there's most likely going to be a yellow flag at some point in the last hour of the race, or the last 2 or 3 hours of the race. And therefore, the only thing that matters is what kind of shape your car is in for the last, it's a 2-hour and 40-minute sprint race at the end of a 24-hour race. And you got to have a really good car to win the sprint.
Yeah. So you've won this race before.
Yeah.
Just talk about what it's like to win this race.
It is, it's my favorite win. And the reason I say it like that is because it has the most recognizable trophy of motors in all of motorsports. If you ask me what my most memorable and most, my best accomplishment in racing would be, I'd tell you that it was winning Le Mans this year. It was winning the World Endurance Championship this year. But most specifically, it was winning Le Mans, because I know that my personal time in the car made the biggest difference on winning that race. The way the IMSA rules are set up, my personal time in the car won't make a difference in this race as long as I take care of the car. Because you have a full course yellow safety car, even if I get 3/4 of a lap on the whole field, it doesn't matter. As soon as the safety car comes out, I lose it all. And so my performance behind the car doesn't really matter in an IMSA race. All I can do is screw up. If I crash the car, then I'm the guy who screwed up. And so, Yeah, as I just talked about, the hardest thing to do for everybody else is the same hardest thing to do for me, is to be conservative and just not screw up, because that's my job. But and so you get to the end of the 24 hours of Daytona, and doing well there for me is just not screwing up. Doing well, winning as a team means that our entire team did not screw up, and that's something special. It's very much a team win there, and it's super special to win a Daytona Rolex. It is the most special trophy in all of motorsports. Every one of the classes gets one if you win the race, and if you win the GTM class at Le Mans, like I just did, you get a trophy, you get a wreath, you get to go through the whole experience, which is awesome. But only the overall winners get a Rolex. And there's something really, really special and neat, about winning the Rolex 24 and getting to wear that trophy on your wrist. There's just nothing else like it. And if I had to choose winning the championship versus winning the Rolex 24 at Daytona, I choose the Rolex 24 every single time. It's only one race, but it's so much. It's such an incredible experience, and it's almost a bigger deal than winning the championship. Even though that sounds weird to say, that's kind of the way it is in the motorsports community.
It is, and I've understood it ever since there. I've been around for, I mean, this is my 7th year doing this, so it's kind of like these marquee races. I mean, everyone wants a Rolex, and you will do whatever it takes to get one. Now, let me ask you this. I've asked all the guests that I've had on to preview Rolex, what's it going to take? And you kind of talked about this, but
Yeah.
what's it take to get to win this race?
I've already said it, but it's going to take the entire team to just don't screw up. That is the number one key factor. Number two, I first did this race in 2011. I had a coach at the time, and I asked him, for his pointers, and he said, he said two things. He said, in 24-hour race like that, I call it the lightning rule. And that is that when you're the driver behind the wheel of the car, it's your responsibility to make sure that the car is in good shape. And if lightning strikes the track out of the blue, if you get a lightning strike, it's your responsibility to make sure that your car is not at the spot where that lightning strikes. And I mean, it's okay. It's kind of a funny, colloquialism or whatever thing to say, but it really is reality. I don't care what the excuse is. I don't care what the reason for it is. If you're the driver behind the wheel of the car, it's your responsibility to make sure nothing bad happens, even if it's out of your control. And it's such a weird thing to say, but that's how it feels for me. And last year we had a bizarre. Last year we ran a perfect race in the PR1 car. We ran a perfect race, no mistakes. We had a great car for the whole race. And when you run a perfect race in a 24-hour race, you feel like you ought to win. We did not even make it on the podium. We got fourth place last year, which was very disappointing for us as a team. But a crazy thing happened, during the middle of the night when I was in the car. The intake for the LMP2 is right above the top of the cockpit, and it's pretty small, but it's kind of a ram air intake, if you will, at the front of that engine cover. And in the middle of the night, one of the window banners came off the car, and it got sucked into the intake. And even though we were able to pull it out of the intake and get going again, it caused us to have a little less power than we should have had. And it's kind of that lightning strike rule. I had no control over that, but it's my responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen. In a spec class like LMP2 is, if something small happens and you're off by 2%, that's all it takes. We had a yellow flag, a safety car where all the cars got piled up. We had a nice big lead, but if you're off by 2%, if we're running somewhere around 500 horsepower, 2% of that's going to be 10 horsepower. If you're off by 10 horsepower, that's going to be 5 miles an hour at the end of the straightaway, and it's going to make it really easy for all those other spec cars that are just like you to drive around you before you go into turn one, and there's nothing you can do about it. And so, the fact that it's a spec class really makes it important that the car is in the best shape you can possibly have it in to finish the race in the last 2 or 3 hours of the race. So, it is very difficult to do, but that's the key to winning. It's not an easy race to win.
All right. Well, Ben Keating, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us, and best of luck in the Rolex 24 this year.
Hey, thank you so much. Appreciate it, Casey.